Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mupo and Friends. We are
Manuela Messina,
and I am Michelle Mupo.
And we're brought to you all by Mupo TV.
And you can catch this show and many others at www.mupotv.com. That's www.mupotv.com. Or you could watch it from the app. Go to the website. You could watch it on Vimeo. You could watch it on Roku, Fire Stick. We're rocking, and I'm excited because this next guest, okay, it's very he brings up a lot of controversy and
no holding back.
I know, and I was told already, don't hold back on my questions because I just, you know me, I get all political.
Yeah.
But with that said, make sure you download our app. And we have what's coming up in the works for this.
Well, I mean, we have the first issue here, and it's still available, and it is a collector's item, and we're just fine-tuning the last little bit of the next issue, which is looking quite fabulous. So if you guys want to get your first copy of the magazine and get a subscription for the second copy, go to www.mupoentertainment.com under store to get your magazine delivered right to you guys.
And I got to tell you something.
Tell me.
The second one's coming out, right? So we keep pushing the date back only because we want to make it so we have to make it better than the first one. And the first one is so damn good that we're just trying to pop the second one. But we got some people in it that are just amazing. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's a good lineup for sure on this one.
Do you have the flyer that you could show everyone about the event, the gala that we're doing? You have it on your phone that you can
I can grab it. So why don't you tell them about it while I pull it up and show them.
We are filming the making of Mupo Entertainment, and it's going to showcase just all of our talent that, you know, not all of our talent, but some of our talent. It's going to be really good. I mean, I'm very excited because we have Hamza Zaman and Chelsea Roth on board with us, and their DPs. And, you know, to have someone like Hamza Zaman on, you know, directing, and then Chelsea Roth just like seriously producing, it's going to be, I know it's going to be a success. It will get awards. I know this. You don't have to tell me because I put it out to the universe as I'm dropping everything in my desk. But, you know, it's something very exciting. Yeah, and M does all the artwork for the, she's doing all the artwork for the event. So no, wait, you got the wrong date. It's 7/21.
Well, that's what it looks like, guys. So yeah, it's quite stunning.
It's 7/21, so it's a Friday night. We are filming an award ceremony. That's one of the scenes, right?
Yeah.
So the scene is going to be very we're going to have a party. Let's just say we're having a party. And you know, people will get awards, and we're going to have a red carpet event. So the scene might take forever, but we're going to make it happen. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And if you guys want to be an executive producer in this, there's ways. Do you have that beautiful thing that you did?
I do.
Well, I'm just trying to like show like because like media here is doing a lot of the stuff. Now, hold on a second. What I want to say is, you know, as we're talking, the scene, there's a VIP scene. That's filming a separate day. Okay. So if you want to be an executive producer, I don't know if you can click onto that, but we'll figure out a way. You go to the website, everything's up there. Look on our social media. We're making stuff happen.
Yeah, it's exciting, guys. And we're just leveling up every time. I think that's the key here for us is like, how do we get better? What can we do? How do we push the envelope just a little bit more and be consistent with our look, our feel, what we want to do, what we want to get out there. I think that's the really big part of Mupo. And obviously the biggest part is having a really cool family to be a part of. So if you guys want that, you're looking for that, you want your own TV show, you don't know where to start, you're not even sure what you want, but you know you want something, this is where you guys can come speak to Michelle and I, and we can help you make your dreams come true, because that's what we do. We make it happen, right?
Yes. Speaking of make it happen, I have this program called Make It Happen. It's a monthly course, and it's what, $59 a month, or you could pay for it for the 12 months or the third, because we'll give you 13. But the point is, this Make It Happen. I show you my method of how I get everything I want. So we have meetings every Wednesday, right? And Wednesday, we hear the crew and they're like, well, we need this. They wanted an app. We got an app. They wanted, information that everyone was like looking at me like this is going to take forever to do. I did it one night, Saturday night. You have to be able to put something aside to get to the next level.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I make it happen. I'm one that I don't like to procrastinate. The only thing I like to procrastinate is cleaning my room. The only thing I like to procrastinate, because when I get in my room, it's like, what do? I'm on the computer. It's crazy. But you'll get to know Mupo, and you'll get to know me and Em. And if you want to come to this event, there are a lot of things, and we are going to have the magazines there to, because I know already people want everyone signed, because it will be a collector's item. So
I think so.
It's going to be a good thing. And I'm excited about this next person coming on, and we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with this special guest who has a lot of controversy.
Welcome back to Mupo and Friends. Our special guest today is an author of Jacob Fishman's Marriages, Funny You Should Mention It, wrote comic 4 Days and a Year Later, The Joke Was on Me, and his latest, Jack Shit, a stand-up comedian and political columnist. His work has appeared in Esquire, and he has co-hosted the Politics blog with Charles P. Pierce. The Progressive Populist. He does radio commentary on Public Radio Tulsa and appeared in the UHF with Weird Al Yankovic, setting the bar for all those who might someday play a character named Fletcher Crony #2. Please welcome author Barry Friedman. Hello, Barry, and how are you?
I am good. Is this where the fake applause goes and the crowd noise?
I could actually put the crowd. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. But
that's good.
I love it. I love it. Now, you're a comedian and an author who enjoys talking about politics. From what we gathered, it looks like you're not afraid to speak your mind, obviously. So tell us, what are your takes on today's administration?
Oh, today's administration. Well, infinitely better than the past administration, meaning you can wake up every morning, listen to the radio, and you hear something like, today, and you go, oh, what happened now? At least now with the Biden administration, you may not disagree, you may not agree with everything, but at least the world isn't coming to an end because he said something to somebody he shouldn't have said. So infinitely better than it was, and not infinitely, but good. He does some really good things. I think he should run again. I think he will win again. And I want Donald Trump to win and run again because Biden can beat him. There you go. That's my political take.
All right, and I'm a Trump. I'm going to say Trump's going to win over Biden personally, but we'll have to talk about that later.
I could tell from your face you were not happy about this. I could tell from your face you were not happy about.
You know what? I don't like to talk politics, but I'm from New Jersey, and I have to say, there was a time where there was no work, and if it wasn't for the casinos and that were being built, they actually, put food on people's tables. Right. So I was upset when the Trump casino got taken down when Trump's Taj Mahal, because that was my favorite casino because it had Starbucks in it. It was purple. It was beautiful.
My mother worked there at the Taj Mahal. She was a costume designer.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I love that place. So I mean, everyone has good and bad in them. I love them. I don't dislike anyone. So I love everyone.
Okay.
I want to
a
ask
hoodie,
you.
though.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I want a hoodie just like you have. Just
Oh, he wants a hoodie like yours.
All right, we'll have to get him one.
We'll have to get him one. I have a question about your book. So your latest book, Jack Shit, Voluptuous Bagels and Other Concerns of Jack Freedom, which is Jack Shit Volume 1, is about your dad and his journey, right? So
Right.
what is so intriguing about that book that'll make people really want to read it?
I don't know. It's fascinating. You should ask that. I started keeping this diary, this journal, when he moved out to Vegas after my mom died. And you'd go out with him to breakfast or a buffet or lunch, and he'd say something, and I'd write it down, post it on Facebook. And the reaction I got was just outstanding. And the more I wrote, the more outstanding it became. And the more people understood and followed people in his life or my life. I mean, they knew about his cousin Bernie. And people would write and say, what happened to Bernie? Because my father could never remember, for instance, that his cousin Bernie died. And so he'd get in the car and go, did you hear Bernie died? He'd go, yeah, you told me. I told you. You told me. When did Bernie die? I don't know when Bernie died. You mentioned it. And this whole conversation, I would just write it as it played out. And then people would just comment on this. And I thought it was really fascinating and very flattering that people who had fathers, had relationships, have relationships, somehow glommed onto mine. And it was just, the more I wrote, the more it seemed like he became this folk hero. And then when I moved him to Tulsa, it got even worse because he was then a celebrity here. And he used to tell people, because he was very competitive, he'd go, I'm the father. I'm the father. He'd mention that like somehow they would be confused which one of us was the older Friedman. And the more I wrote it, the more it sort of steamrolled. And enough people tell you should put this in a book, And when publisher thought it was a great idea. And so eventually I did. And when I was putting it together, they could not all fit in one volume. So I figured we're going to have 3 volumes. So what you have is the first volume in front of you.
How was this book easier than the previous one, since you had all this experience? Because you do have a lot of experience.
Because he was sort of the star and I was the scribe of the book. And so I'd be in the middle of it. I'd be in the conversation. Obviously, I was the son. Obviously, I took care of things for him. But up until his death in November, he was still pretty active. And so he'd carry the conversation and ask all sorts of crazy questions and be inappropriate. But once in a while, there'd be a gem in something he'd say. And I wouldn't even know it would be a gem until he'd bring it up. Like, for instance, he was, as I said, inappropriate. And a lot of times he would seem insane. But he used to wear the world's worst toupees. I mean, imagine the worst toupee you've ever seen on a man's head. This one's worse than that. He used to buy them. They were women's hair pieces. And he'd go online and buy them, and they'd come in a box. And they'd have names like Rihanna or Star. And he'd put them on his head, and he'd cut them himself.
Wow.
Imagine what could go wrong with that. And so they were awful, awful. And one time his friend in Vegas decided he was going to cut my father's hair. Cut the fake hair. And this hair was, doormat thick. And we're driving home. My father said, how come everybody makes fun of my hair? I go, because it's ridiculous. And I said, first thing you got to do is stop buying hair that comes in a box. And he said, what do you want me to do? That's the way they come. And I thought, well, he's not entirely wrong. In his mind, that's exactly how they come. What else was he going to do? And so he'd have logic like that, and he'd have an insight here or there, and he'd say something would just be so brilliant, and you just have to get through all the nonsense to get to it. And it was fascinating. He was charming and inappropriate beyond inappropriateness. He was dating a woman. She was taking him out to a movie once in a while, and she was a big woman. This is important to the story. She's a big woman. And she showed him a picture of her mother, who was not a big woman. Like, she was from Jersey. Her mother was like 5'1", 100, and Leanna is probably 5'7", 180, 190, maybe 200. And my father looked at a picture of Leanna's mother and actually said to Leanna, oh my God, does she know how big you are? He had no filter. And I guess at 90, they knew they had no filter. Guys like that know they have no filter, and they just traffic in it. They just love having no filter and showing you how much non-filter they have.
Oh, I know about that.
So you appeared on the UHF, which is the ultra high frequency, for the ones that don't know it out there, with Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah.
Tell us, what was that all about?
In late 1980s, he came to Tulsa to film UHF, and Michael Richards was in it, and Fran Drescher was in it, and Victoria Jackson was in it, and I was in it. I mean, I'm not in order. And it was one of these cult classics, which I thought was, maybe the worst movie ever made, but people loved it. And I got this part as a businessman, one of the cronies to one of the big bosses. And I had 2 or 3 lines. And it was one of these things where they came back 25 years later to do a silver anniversary of the movie. And I was talking to Weird Al and the director, Jay Levy, I think his name was. And I casually made the comment that it was their fault that Victoria Jackson turned out to be so out of her mind, because before that she was relatively sane, but after UHF she went crazy. And they were so serious about the movie. They did not see the sort of the absurdity of this movie, which came out, I think, the same week as just a couple of famous movies. So 9 people saw it when it came out, but it had sort of a life on video. I keep getting $9 checks from every time it runs in a drive-in in Lithuania. I'll get a $6 or $7 check. It's astonishing to me how this movie has lived. So that was my big cinematic break, was my Weird Al Yankovic movie, to UHF. And my lines were, the boss says, "Where's the report?" I said, "It's on your desk. I don't see it. When did you leave it?" "Yesterday, sir, before you left." Those are my lines.
Wow, that's amazing. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we're going to be right back.
With Barry Friedman. Barry, let's talk about comedy. How did you actually get into the scene? Tell us about your first gig. Like, you did tell us about your lines that you had, but were you nervous because it was Weird Al Yankovic?
No, it was a day off. I mean, it was just fun to do it. And let me just compliment you on the way you say Barry. I haven't heard my name pronounced correctly in 30 years. Say it again.
Barry Friedman.
Oh, Barry. I love Barry. See,
Jersey's in the house.
Barry. I love that accent. Barry Friedman. Barry Friedman. My mother used to call me Ba, because Barry was too long. Barry. Anyway, how I got into comedy. I just want to thank you. Just keep saying my name. If there's a lull, just go Barry.
Barry.
There we go. How I got into comedy. It was the late 80s, right around the time with Weird Al. And I'm driving on an interstate with my first wife. And I see a message board that has a comedy contest advertised at a hotel, $100 first prize. She said, "Well, why don't you do that? You seem a little restless." So I enter the contest, do a bunch of terrible old jokes, and I win the contest. Next week, there's another contest, another $100. I enter that, win that one as well. Now I think, well, wait a minute, maybe this could be a career or something. I didn't think career. Went to the comedy club, started doing open mic nights, and it seemed to fit. Whatever your personality is, it just seemed to take. And a couple of weeks, months later, a guy came, saw me do an open mic night. He said, "You want to go on the road with me?" And the first gig I did was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And then we drove to Rapid City, South Dakota, which is like on the other end of the state. And I called the booker. I said, "How long of a drive is this?" He said, "It's 6 hours." I go, "There's no way it's 6 hours. It's like 390 miles. He goes, "Yeah, but you gain an hour. So it's only 6 hours." I said, "But you're driving for 7." But in his mind, the clock just says 6 hours. That's all it was. But after those 2 gigs, I really liked it. I really could tell this might be a good thing to pursue. And started doing more and more one-nighters in Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa. And back then, any Holiday Inn that had a lounge was doing comedy. And then from that, I got to Vegas, and Vegas is where I did most of the work in the 90s and the early aughts, and then started doing some corporate gigs. But for the past 32 years, I've been working the Bahamas at the Atlantis Hotel and Casino. There's a club down there, and they booked me kind of early, and they've been booking the same comedians for the last 26 years because they know we can do the job and we don't cause trouble. And so that's how comedy developed. And after a while, every comic gets to a point where whatever he or she is doing, she has to decide whether or not you're going to pursue comedy full time, because you can't keep telling your boss at work, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off and do a one-nighter in Cedar Rapids. So you have to make a decision. And, yeah. And so I did it and started doing more and more work. And 35 years later, here I am. So there's no future and there's no security, but there is that sense that you wake up every morning, most mornings, at least I'm doing what I'm doing. My father one time said to me, he's watching Seinfeld on rerun, and it just comes unglued. He goes, there's no life for you. There's no future. There's no security. You can't do this work anymore. And I said to him, how much money do I have to have for you to think I'm a success? And he said, 155,000. I go, you have a figure? It's a rhetorical question. In his mind, he actually had a figure. And the only thing I can figure is he probably had 150,000 in the bank and thought if I made more than he did, I was a success. And maybe that was a generational thing where kids were supposed to do better than their parents. But that's how life sort of happened. You just get into comedy. It's fun work. And then you realize when you see your contemporaries, there's no security. Everybody's losing work. Everybody's getting fired at 50 and 60. And at least with comedy, you can make enough of a living to get by, and you have your own life. And not to be glib, but that alarm clock is a big thing when you wake up when you want, unless you're catching a plane, and you get paid to tell jokes in front of people you don't know in sometimes pretty good cities. It was a tough thing to give up, a tough thing to bitch about. One time I was working on the Cayman Islands for 2 weeks, and because they were worried about air travel, they used to fly the comedians in 2 days early. He said, you don't have to do anything. We just want you here 2 days early. We'll put you up, we'll feed you. And I was sitting at the bar one night, the Monday night before the Wednesday start of the week, and this one comedian's just bitching about having nothing to do for 2 days. And why does he have to come in 2 days early? I remember thinking, you're in the Cayman Islands. They paid you to be here.
Exactly.
You don't have to do anything, and you're bitching about it. And right then I thought, God's going to hear this. The gig cannot last. And sure enough, about a month later, they stopped doing it. But to me, I never got over the fact that it was, I didn't use the word blessing, but I never got over the fact how lucky I was that I was doing this. And so if your worst part of your day is missing a plane connection, or, the taxi not being there to pick you up, or the car not being there to pick you up, it's really not the worst thing in the world if an audience doesn't like you, because at the worst, you're still funnier than 99% of the people who hate you. So it was really, is, I don't know what tends to put it in, because I don't do it quite as much. Really pretty wonderful life. I mean, you're asking me today. Tomorrow, maybe not, but right now, I can tell you it's a pretty wonderful life.
So you've done comedy in Vegas.
Yes.
I would love to know what goes on in the preparation for that, because that's quite a big stage that you're on.
Well, most of the shows I did in Vegas, they were comedy clubs within the hotels. Okay. So it was a regular comedy club with a lot of people from Oklahoma and Kansas and Jersey dressed up on vacation. Like even in Atlantic City, I played Harrah's, and I played, what was the hotel? It started with a C.
The Showboat?
No, with a C. It was right.
Caesars.
Caesars?
Not Caesars. There was another one. Anyway, did Bally's a couple of times and resorts, and they were comedy clubs in the hotel. And once you got over the fact that you were in Vegas and you were just talking to people, most of them who were from Jersey or wherever they were from, it was just a regular show to me. The hardest part about comedy, nobody really believes this, but once you're doing comedy and you're a comedian, the hardest trouble is getting the work. And then once you get the work, there really isn't stage fright unless you're doing the Tonight Show or something. But if you're just doing a show, you got the gig, they know you're funny, and The toughest part is actually getting these bookers on the phone to get your date.
And who were some of your comedic influences and how have they shaped your style?
Well, when I was starting out, I know you can't mention Woody Allen anymore, but Woody Allen was one of them. Mort Sahl was one of them. Lenny Bruce, the monologists who had an edge to them. And then these days, a lot of comedians you've never heard of, like Ken Rogerson, an old friend of mine from Boston. And some of these guys were just, they were up there. And maybe the two best pieces of advice I ever got was one time a comedian said to me before I went on stage, tell some truth up there, which I thought was really great to hear, because you want to be able to think that whatever the comedian's telling you happened. I think it's important. So when a comedian, I mean, I know Carrot Top pretty well, and Scott used to do this joke on stage about how he could never go on stage and say, I was with my girlfriend last night, because the audience would say, no, you weren't. But some comedians, you go on stage and they say something to you and go, this guy lived that. Like, for instance, I work with this one guy, Wild Willie Parsons, and he's a biker dude, and he looks just tough and rugged, and he's got the jean jacket on, and he's got the long hair, and he's smoking. He goes, listen, I was in Vietnam. He goes, and I killed some people. I'm not proud of it, but if I don't want Girl Scout cookies, I don't want them. I thought, now clearly he didn't kill a Girl Scout, but the rest of it, you got the feeling, wait a minute, this guy really has been in Vietnam. And so I think if you believe what somebody's telling you on stage, the battle for the comedian, for us, for me anyway, is at least half done.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back with our special.
And we are back with Barry Friedman. I hope I said that right.
Not nearly as well.
No, I know. Okay. I'm not from Jersey. I'm from Canada.
Oh, from Canada.
I'm from Canada. So yes, but I want to know, can you describe your creative process when you're writing and performing your material?
Well, the comedy is the insight, the joke will actually just hit me. I mean, or I'll hear something that's so obviously the punchline that I build the joke around it. I'll give an example. One time in Vegas, I was dating, this is important to the story, I was dating a showgirl. And after one of the shows, my dad was there. She came out and said hi, and we hugged. And she had the jeans on and the boots, and her hair was piled up, and her makeup was, and she looked that wonderful combination of trashy and sexy and just perfectly wonderful. And as she walked away, my father said, you know her? I said, yeah, we're sort of dating. And he just stopped and said, oh, to be 60 again. And I thought, there's the joke right there. Oh, and I said to him, I said, Dad, is that your line? Because if it's not your line, I don't want to use it. And he got very offended. He goes, yeah, it's my bit. I go, you're an accountant. You don't have bits. Well, sometimes the joke literally, figuratively writes itself. My parents were married for 35 years. They split up for a year. Then they got back together. My dad's an accountant. So one day I said, Dad, how long have you been married? I forget. He goes, what do you mean, gross or net? It's hilarious. So that just made it into the act. So comedy to me was much more organic than the writing. To me, the writing is, now that I have things to do, like with the blog or some of the other reporting, I sit down and write. My daughter commented 6 months ago to me. She said, She goes, you don't just write to write anymore, do you? I said, what do you mean? She goes, a lot of people sit and write, whether it's a journal, diary, they want to get their thoughts out, poetry, and they don't show it to anybody. She goes, you don't do that. I go, no, everything I write does have somewhere to go. So now it's a matter of if somebody, like for instance, these geology stories that I write, if they have 2 stories that are due the next day, and I have to stay up half the night to write them, it seems like a really good trade because I know the next day is going to be free for me. And so the work has to get done. So it gets done. I think to your question, though, I don't sit down every day to prescribe time and write because I just haven't had to. Some people I think do, and they are better for it. But the line I give sometimes is if you're Bob Dylan and you write Mr. Tambourine Man on Monday, you can probably take the rest of the week off. But if you look at some people whose output, I knew this one woman who wrote a book and it took her 10 years and she had 89 pages, which means she was writing 8 or 9 pages a year. Now that's clearly not enough. So she needs to sit down and have a schedule, as a lot of writers tell you to do. You know, you write 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. A friend of mine in New England, William Martin, a great historical novelist, we used to joke about this, and he said, no, you wake up every morning, you put on shoes and you sit down and write. And my first thought was, shoes? I don't wear shoes to write. But in his mind, you have to go to work, so you put on shoes because you wear shoes at work.
I love it. I love it. Now, does your material, I mean, obviously your material does tackle sensitive and controversial topics. How do you navigate those waters and find humor, in them?
That's a really good question. It depends on the city and state, and also on the administration. I mean, I found that the Clinton supporters took jokes about Clinton much better than the Trump people took jokes about Trump. And so you kind of maneuver it, and sometimes you decide you're going to do the joke anyway. Sometimes you think, why do this? It's not going to be funny. Because at some point, you have to come back to the fact, is it funny? Is it getting a laugh? Now, when you get to be uber famous, it doesn't really matter if it's funny, believe it or not. If you watch Dave Chappelle, who I think is brilliant, a lot of the stuff isn't funny as much as it is insightful, and as much as it is the fact you're in a room with Dave Chappelle who's doing it. So Dave Chappelle can go on stage and you go, this is Dave Chappelle, whatever he says, you give him quite a float to get to the point where you like him or you don't like him. Some comedians who you don't know, they go on stage, they tell 1 or 2 jokes you don't like, you've checked out. And so in my case, when I'm booked to do a corporate event where they know it's me, I can do a lot more of what I want to do than if I go to a regular club who's just booking me because I'm another comedian on the schedule.
Interesting.
But immediately, to answer your question, immediately what happens is you do a couple of jokes. If they don't work, like in my case, being Jewish, growing up in New York and now living in Oklahoma, some people find that hilarious, and some people, okay. But some people,
I'm trying not to laugh.
yeah, no, but some people go, I don't understand. Is that a Jew? What's he? They don't get the whole concept. I mean, I do this. I open the show by going, I'm from New York. I'm a Jew. I live in Oklahoma, and I start singing, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, oi. And some people laugh, and some people don't. I do the joke about wearing a yarmulke in Oklahoma. I said, it's really tough because you wear a yarmulke in Oklahoma, people think you're stealing a salad plate. Now, people either get the yarmulke joke or they don't, or they feel like he's making fun of Oklahoma, which of course I am. And comedy is reductive, and it is, cliched in some way. Take some people's the worst stereotypes and you play on them. But again, as long as there's some truth to them, I think you can get away with it. It's the obvious stereotypes that everybody's heard the jokes now. So, like I don't know, nobody I know doing comedy is doing a blonde joke or something. But fish out of water, like somebody from Tulsa, in a place he shouldn't be, somebody from New York in a place that shouldn't be. That still makes sense, like, what am I doing here?
So we know you've been performing for a little bit of time. And how have you seen the comedy industry change over time? And how did you have to adapt to those changes, or did you not see any change at all?
No, I did. It got so saturated that a lot of comedy clubs started closing. And then everybody got a YouTube channel, and then everybody got, a dry bar. And so what happened is you had these comedians on some of these contests on TV who really worked hard and had a very good, tight 7 or 8 minutes. But you get them into a comedy club and say, now you have to do 45 minutes. And it didn't go quite as well. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of comedy clubs want the comedians to do a lot of the promotion for them, where you have, YouTube followers and Instagram followers and Facebook followers. When I started, there were people who had lists and used to call and write people and say, I'm coming to town, but it was never orchestrated like it is now. So getting into these new clubs, I don't know how you do that, nor do I know how comedians, when I was starting, you'd have an opening act, a feature act, and a headliner. And let's say the opening act would get 300 a week, the feature act would get 7 or 8, headliner would get between 1,200 and 1,500. Well, if you're doing a string of one-nighters through Kansas and Iowa and Michigan and pick a number of cities, and you're making $1,500 a week, you can make a living when gas is $1.50 a gallon. But now that money's come down and there aren't quite as many clubs, I don't know how guys start other than they go right to one of the coasts and just try to catch a break. Because I know some comedians in Tulsa now who every bar that has an open mic night, they'll do comedy. But I don't know how you start to make a living. So how I adjusted was how a lot of people adjusted. You get into the clubs that liked you and you worked, and you keep those relationships.
So obviously your book's called Jack Shit. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, again, I thought it was really important to have a book that nobody could actually mention if you were marketing it. I thought it was very important to do that. I was trying to figure out all the buzz phrases my father used to say. And I figured, well, those buzz phrases will be like the 3 volumes. When he used to get very upset in life, he would say something like, whatever the situation was, whether it was a razor didn't work or a relative who annoyed him, what do they want from my life? Which to me was a brilliant phrase. And so that would be like one of the subheads of another book. Another one was, he used to say, I give up. Or if you asked him a question, you said, Jack, how are you? He'd say, got a half hour? I'll tell you the whole story. Better yet, wait for the movie. It's in color. Mm-hmm. What's hilarious about that is this man actually thought the fact it was a movie in color was a thing. Because I guess when he was growing up, they aren't always. Yeah. So, and a friend of mine actually owns a bookstore here in Tulsa said this has got to be called, Jack Shit. I mean, all the stuff that my father did and represented. So I thought that'd be, and I called it Jack Shit. My publisher never said anything about it. And it came out as Jack Shit. And each volume will have a separate subhead.
Awesome.
I love that.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with the conclusion of our interview with author Barry Friedman and comedian, I should say.
We are back, and before we wrap things up, we have one last question for you. If you could be in a room with any comedian, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's good. I would like to be in a room. Can it be more than one?
Sure.
All right. I do want Dave Chappelle.
Mm-hmm.
I want Woody Allen. I want Groucho. And I want Mort Saul.
Okay.
Very good. Very good.
Why?
Well, yeah, I was going to say why.
Because they're different styles and insights, and they're brilliant. And they each have a style that I like and would hope that I emulate in some respect. You channel comedians, you channel writers. And I guess those 4 less so Chappelle, but I still think there's something amazing about him that I would like to see how it works. It's a lot of times when you meet comedians who are very famous, at least when I do, it's important to know whose turn it is. And so one time I met Seinfeld at Catch a Rising Star, and we were talking, and there was another comedian with us, and the comedian kept butting in, go, no, you let Jerry talk and we just sit here and nod. And so with the comedians I just told you about that table, I would do a lot of nodding and just listening. I had very little to add to the conversation, but I think being the fly on the wall with those people would be good.
Very cool.
Great answer.
Well, it's been absolutely a pleasure to visit you today here on Mupo and Friends. And you guys can follow, like, and subscribe to Barry Friedman on Twitter at FriedmansBS. You can also find him at his websites, which are www.friedmanoftheplains.com and www.barrysfriedman.com. And you can also purchase his books on Amazon.com as well.
Thank you.
And as always, thank you for tuning into Mupo and Friends, courtesy of Mupo TV. And you could catch this show and many others at www.mupotv.com. That's www.mupotv.com. And catch us on Roku, Fire Stick, Vimeo, YouTube. And make sure you download our app on Android and iOS. And the second issue of the Mupo magazine is coming. You could still order the first one. Don't forget, we're filming for Make It Happen, which is the pilot series with Hamza Zaman and Chelsea Roth directing and producing, July 19th to the 23rd. If you guys want to be a part of this, go to the website and check it out.
And this is Manuela Messina with our amazing host.
Well, thank you. My name's Michelle Mupo, right? And I'm from Jersey, and I say Barry Friedman.
Barry Friedman.
What exit?
So I'm going to say have a Mupo awesome week.